This podcast is part of the Podcast Arcade Network.
Welcome to episode 27 of Paranormal Dads. I'm your co-host, Eddie.
I'm your co-host, Andy.
I'm your co-host, Pat.
Please join us as we go in search of the world's monsters, myths, and mysteries right here on Paranormal Dads. All right, guys, here we are again.
Awesome.
Once again,
Episode 27,
we join in the Eddie Den.
the podcast studios.
That's right.
You know, this I've tried. It's not quite. You have the paranormal. You have the Bigfoot sanctuary.
That's right.
What'd you call it again?
It's my crypto den.
Your crypto den.
Yeah, it's my man cave with a paranormal and kind of monsters and myths and mysteries slant on it.
Yep.
Who's it? Somebody called this the nerd den or the nerd cave, or
Yeah,
you
this
don't
kinda-
like that, do you? It's the studio.
I like to see it as a creation space. I
Yeah,
mean, this is where we do all of the other podcasts get recorded out of here as well. And I don't have quite the same unifying theme that you do. Pat has like a Star Wars dedicated basement. almost exclusively
yeah.
Star Wars.
Pretty much exclusively Star Wars. I had a ton of Star Wars stuff. I used to have an entire bedroom dedicated to Star Wars. You know, I had a bed, I had sheets on the bed, I had pillows, posters on the wall. I had it done up right. Had to give up that room for the kids. Little things like that.
Darn kids.
But so I still have some of my stuff down in the basement. A lot more of it in storage.
Yeah.
Which kind of makes me feel bad sometimes. But you got to do what you got to do.
Exactly.
Eddie, your decor just can't be contained by any one genre.
Really, that's kind of where we're at.
You're all over the place, buddy. But this room is a good representation of your life because it is a little bit of everything.
A little bit of everything.
That's right.
Got some comedy stuff, got some comic book stuff, got some sci-fi and some fantasy,
Some cryptids,
some Transformers,
video games.
I like to think of it. Even my wife, who likes a lot of this stuff, but doesn't profess it a ton. She doesn't rush out and buy tickets for the first day of the Avengers movies or anything. But she's even come down here and been like, a lot of this stuff kind of evokes creativity. So she's like, it's kind of fun just to sit down and kind of just soak it in. But yeah, here we are gathered in the podcast studios, and we're gonna record us some new Paranormal Dads. We've got a good show lined up for you.
We do, and as always, we begin with recent sightings. Who has this one today, boys?
It's my turn.
All right, Pat, here we go.
Attack.
So do you have plans on visiting Alberta, Canada next year or this year?
Wasn't on the horizon, but now I think I should.
Well, now you should, because the Heritage Discovery Center is sharing classic Sasquatch stories. Sasquatch. Say that 10 times fast.
Classic Sasquatch.
Classic Sasquatch stories from Alberta with its new exhibit, In the Shadow of the Rockies, Alberta's Sasquatch Stories. Ooh. So it's basically like a museum that they have, and they've got this exhibition of stories about Sasquatch right in the Alberta area.
Man.
The Rocky Mountains run right through there. Most of the stories take place on the west side of the mountains.
Okay.
So very squatchy area.
Yep.
Canada is full of trees.
I mean, the entire country is Squatch territory.
I mean, Canada's got to be a haven for Sasquatch, you would think. But the exhibit opened in September, and the curator, a man by the name of Charles Tawes, believes this is the first exhibit on Sasquatch with an Alberta focus. And it features 5 classic Alberta Sasquatch stories. So if you search for Bigfoot and Alberta or Sasquatch, there are a lot of videos and pictures and things of activity in and around Alberta, Canada. with Bigfoot. Some of them look the pictures look almost a little too good for my taste.
Right.
But others, there could be a little meat behind some of these stories.
Such as the documentary called Sasquatch, Is He a Hoser, eh? Sasquatch stole my toque.
But the exhibit will feature static displays of reported encounters detailing back to 1811. Other displays include casts of footprints and large mural of Sasquatch, where people, of course, can take selfies. There are also 2 computer setups where people can search the Alberta Sasquatch and Canada Sasquatch websites and review the surprising numbers of sightings in and around Alberta.
Very cool. You said sightings back to 1811.
1811.
Wow.
So that's going back away.
That's back away. And people were of smaller stature back then, right? I mean, just humans' average height was like
general, yeah,
5'5", 5'6". I wonder if Bigfoots were smaller back then too. They're medium foots back then.
or they were only like 6'2", and they were like, he towered over me, eh? He was like, he blocked out the sun.
And every witness sounds exactly like Rick Moranis.
That's right.
Exactly.
But people are also invited to write down their own Sasquatch stories and leave them up on a bulletin board. And they will also be able to, this is my favorite part, they will be able to stick their heads through a window where they will see a brief glimpse of Sasquatch and then draw what they see afterwards and compare it to their sketches with those who actually had eyewitness accounts. So they're kind of showing a lot of the sightings people have are very quick, very sudden. He darts across the road, or he runs through some trees and you just caught a glimpse of him. Mm-hmm. So they want people to kind of see, probably, stick their head in this box and probably see a video glimpse of him and then try to come up with their own recollection of what they saw and compare it with what people who actually had experiences with and what they saw. Something like this, it's actually kind of an interesting way to do it because I took a citizens academy for a police academy when I lived in Kansas City one time. And one of our first nights sitting there, it was like a classroom setting. A guy comes running into the room, robs our teacher's wallet.
What?
And goes running out of the room. And so we had to fill out a police report and state, okay, this is the description of the suspect, blah, blah, blah. It was
so
like...
it was a stage?
So yeah, it was all staged, but they're trying to,
It was a really rough part of Kansas City.
I was gonna say, man.
Nowhere to go.
Guy got ripped off right in the police station. But they were trying to press the point that, when these things happen, they happen fast a lot of the time. And you miss a lot of the details because, we'll come up with our reports and, our descriptions of the guy. And then they brought the guy back in. It's like, wow, I was way off on what I thought I saw.
Right. He's completely different. Yeah.
So, I thought that was kind of an interesting way to, treat Bigfoot sightings kind of the same way.
That's kind of smart.
I saw a documentary once that was kind of in a similar vein. It was talking about large birds, almost like thunderbird kind of phenomena. And what they did was kind of to prove that some people are a good gauge of size, and they're good at note taking and reporting, and they're good at depth perception, and some people aren't.
Yeah.
And so what they did is they made essentially a kite that looks like a large thunderbird, and this thing had like a 25 foot wingspan, and they flew it like, I don't know, 200 feet up in the sky, and then they would have bystanders come by and try to guess the dimensions of this thing. And some people were way, way, way off, and some people way overestimated. And it you round up 10 people, and you'll get 10 different 10 different reports. So, but that's a really neat thing to add to the museum, to give people that firsthand experience of what it might be like to see one of these creatures and how it goes by so quickly.
When you said stick your head through the hole, it reminded me of this exhibit at the Henry Dorley Zoo here in Omaha little plug there, where it was in the kingdoms of the night,
Right.
and it was like trying to get you to understand like how bats see and smell and stuff, and it was like put your head through the hole and smell what's on the other side, and I was like, no,
So many jokes.
I'm not gonna
So many jokes.
so many jokes. Like,
Eddie's head was gonna explode.
exactly. I just covered my ears and ran out. La la la. I couldn't do it. I was just dying. But yeah, I just pictured that like go through and see a Sasquatch, and you poke your head through, and all of a sudden you get like poo flung at you or something. like you come out, just run off. This wasn't what I thought. This is not Bigfoot. Canada starts laughing.
Yeah.
Ha ha ha. That's
But,
yeah. What a great setup. Though.
Yeah, but the exhibit also has, kind of something near and dear to our hearts. Deals with Sasquatch in pop culture.
Yes.
Hey.
So they probably talk about bionic Bigfoot
That you
and
know they
things like
do.
that.
You know they do.
It talks about the advent of cryptozoology and how stories of similar creatures can be found around the globe. So this exhibit runs through September 2019. So if you're going to be up in Alberta, you'll have to check it out. It sounds like a really fun time.
To get our passports ready, guys.
Yeah.
That's right.
I think I spent some time in Alberta. A few years back, we flew over to Japan and we stopped in Alberta. We spent a day sitting in the airport, I think on the way home. And so I sat in the Alberta airport for a day, which was, I as I remember, a pretty small place.
Yeah.
So that was a long day.
Yeah. That's going to be the
But-
case in any airport.
Mm-hmm.
Poke your head through a window there and see what
Yeah.
you can find.
Yeah.
Where are the Bigfoots? Get back in the plane.
So kind of recent sighting, recent events. That's the cool thing about recent sightings. There's some flexibility there with that
Yeah, I
segment.
took a little
and
liberty with this one. But,
That's
I
okay.
thought it was kind of fun.
It's a recent event. It counts for sure. I'm trying to do my, and I'm gonna sound like a total doofus here, but I know like Vancouver, that's like above Pacific Northwest. Whereabouts is Alberta?
Alberta's
relative to,
kind of west central Canada.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it's going to be
like
kind
above
of
Montana.
above Montana.
Yeah.
Right.
Gotcha.
Yep.
I was going to say,
So the
yeah.
Rocky Mountains are running up there, through Colorado and up into Canada. So it's kind of, not terribly far from us, but it's on the western side. It's
on
not,
the outskirts of the middle.
not going to be over by Toronto. If you go to Toronto, you've gone the wrong way.
Darn it.
Some guy's gonna get to the wrong part of Canada and send us a strongly worded letter.
Just start asking where Bigfoot is and see what happens.
Bigfoot's not in Toronto.
Hello, Toronto. I was told to stick my head through a hole. Where's that hole?
Guys, I'm in jail in Toronto. Help me.
Well, on that note, maybe we'll move into pop culture and the paranormal.
It's time for pop, culture, and the paranormal.
All right, pop culture and the paranormal. It was my pick for this time, and I thought we could talk about video games, scary video games. So kind of paranormal-ish, but monsters, ghosts, just kind of any kind of video game that'll give you the goosebumps. Dating back whether it's original on Nintendo or Xbox or PlayStation consoles, and there's a lot to choose from. I mean, you got everything from like the Silent Hill series to Resident Evil. You have even back to original like Super Mario 1, 2, and 3. They had those little ghosts. He's usually in the castle, like one of the castle.
Yeah, he's the castle bad
levels.
guy.
And you turn away from the ghost and it'll chase you, and then you look back at it and it'll freeze still.
Which tell me won't give a kid some sort of disorder. You know what I mean? Like, Billy, why are you walking backwards everywhere you go? I can't stop looking.
They chase you if you look away from it. But on a similar note, getting off the rails here a little bit, but there's a pretty common phenomena of people who report that the feeling of being followed up the stairs, like from the basement.
Yeah.
Now, your basement's not creepy at all here,
No.
Eddie. This is a pretty nice setup, but unfinished basements. I remember growing up in a house that was quite frankly just haunted as all get out, and me and my siblings would kind of practically run up the stairs because it always felt like Well, it felt like Super Mario Brothers. It
Yeah.
felt like there was a ghost behind you.
Yeah.
And if you turned around and looked at it, it would stop chasing you. But as soon as you turned around and started walking up the stairs, you could feel a presence on your heels again.
Yeah.
Ugh.
It's
Give me
funny.
willies.
It's funny you brought this up. I just remembered this just now, and I don't want to like overtake the segment here. This actually gets into. It was kind of a creepy version. So if anyone listening is familiar, and I know all of us here at the table have at least heard of the series, Legend of Zelda.
Yeah.
There is a urban myth, maybe it's real, of a case of a person who will, and you can look this up online, like actively, where a person picked up a video game that they believe the actual game itself is haunted. That have you heard of this?
Like it's a haunted object.
It's a haunted object.
Okay.
And it happens to be a copy of the Zelda video game. The Legend of Zelda series has gone on since its original inception, like 1985, the first Legend of Zelda.
Yeah. Unregular classic NES Nintendo.
Yeah, that series continues to this day
Right.
with different iterations of the characters and story and setting of that story. This is a version of the game that was on a game console called the Nintendo Gamecube. If anyone remembers that one. The controller looks bonkers. If you look at the controller, it looks like a bunch of Skittles were just thrown on a...
No, that was the version right after Super Nintendo, right?
It was right after the 64.
Okay, yeah,
The
after
Nintendo
okay.
64.
Nintendo, Super Nintendo, 64, and then it was GameCube.
Yep.
Okay.
And so this GameCube, and the discs were little. They were like tiny CDs.
Yeah.
And the game was called Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask.
Okay.
That's the name of this game. The game itself is kind of an eerie addition to Legend of Zelda. I believe, and please no one, was not gaming at this time. We had babies. We had little kids. Like anyone who's a parent knows, your free time gets gobbled up quite a bit. So I didn't play this particular game, but I did read the article and talk to people who played it. It's an odd entry into the series already. It's kind of dark. There's basically a setting where the moon is either possessed with a dark spirit, or there's something bad about the moon. And this person buys a used copy of this game at a yard sale and then puts it in and starts to play it. And there's a saved version like on the game. Oh no, they bought a used GameCube with the game.
Okay.
And on the little memory card there was a saved version of the game, and they were just out of curiosity. They were like, oh, I'll just see where this person left off. And I think the name of the save file was something weird, and they thought that was interesting. And they went into this.
There's not a guy named Satan out there. What's weird about that?
Exactly. 666. Don't play.
Yeah, he had 666,000 points.
Exactly. So the person resumes this game that was saved on this GameCube under for the Majora's Mask, Legend of Zelda, and basically the game is full of weird glitches and things that the game was never supposed to do. And at one point, the character of this moon interacts with the person in a way that is like it's like saying like "Hi, Andy" and things like that.
It almost sounds kind of like a Jumanji kind of thing where the game comes alive.
Kind of Jumanji-ish, but basically, and I forget all the specifics, but it got to the point where this game was beginning to detail out specific events of this person's life, and it was starting to put this person off, and they would like turn it off and not play the game, and then they would begin having really troubling dreams. And so it was basically a haunted version of this game. So anyone who's listening or interested, check it out. This article.
What do you say if you're that person? You go to your counselor or therapist. Tell me what's been going on. Well, my video game's possessed, and
Yeah.
Now I have nightmares.
No,
Yeah.
okay, let's go get the straitjacket.
Yeah. And on a happy note about
Yeah.
a game that has echoes, in a way, kind of a ghost. This kid was cleaning. Story one was this family experienced a tragic loss. The father had died just suddenly, and his kids were still pretty small. His son grew up to be a little bit older, about 17, 18, and they were cleaning out a storage closet and came across an old Xbox, original Xbox, which had come out in like 2000. And so this is fairly recent. This is maybe 1 or 2 years ago.
Okay.
This kid finds this Xbox and decides to turn it on, and there's a series of games saved to it. And so one of them was a racing game. And so he fires it up, and it still works. And he sees the last save was under his dad's profile. And he thought, I'm going to fire it up and to see. And it's this racing game, which allows you to race the person who last got the best time on this game.
Okay.
It shows their car as literally a phantom car.
Sure.
And it's nothing eerie about it. That's the game is built
And
for that.
you have to try to beat that person's
to beat
time.
that person's time, and so
Yeah.
you're literally like, and the car is literally like driving it's replaying the playthrough that
Sure.
won the highest score.
Right.
This kid will race. It makes me a little teary eyed. This kid will race his dad's last game, and he said, "I never beat it. I never beat it."
So it's in a roundabout way. It's almost like he's playing a video game with his dad still.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's pretty cool.
And he's like, I never beat it because if I beat it, then it'll overwrite the game.
Sure.
So he always makes sure to, like, at the very finish line, he'll just kind of hit the brakes
Drop
and let his dad
That's cool.
cross the finish line.
A
It's
little heartwarming there.
little heartwarming there. But yeah, you'd mentioned some stuff, and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's like stories of actual, like, either just through that or even more scary, something like that. But yeah, and for me, I kind of with you, like I've been more or less playing video games on and off since the original Nintendo. Like we say in life, like all of us, we have peaks and valleys where we play more or less. And, it's a thing I think I'll do till I die. It's just something that'll always be a part of my life.
Well, it's acceptable now. Like, we're the first generation of, like, 30, 40, 50-year-olds who are going to be like grandparents playing video games.
Yeah.
Our grandparents didn't play video games.
No.
I mean, it just wasn't a thing.
No,
you know?
but they were also like grown adults. They were in their 40s or 50s when games came out.
Right.
So for them, it was already kind of like, and they were always advertised as toys. I mean, initially.
Yeah.
And it took later for that to catch up. And I even said to someone at work, and it's silly at this point that it's not really a debatable point, but it's like, oh, I didn't aware that I thought you were a grown up or something. And it's like most people don't even say that anymore because it's a legitimate form of entertainment.
Because a lot of the games are geared towards adults. You don't see,
Yeah.
you got Grand Theft Auto, you have the new game, Red Dead Redemption. It's kind of Old West shoot 'em up game. They're made for adults. So.
Yeah.
But going back even to our youth, I remember playing on regular Nintendo Castlevania.
Yes.
You got skeletons, you have zombies in there, I believe, and you got ghouls and.
Oh, it didn't take long. I mean, there was a Friday the 13th game on the Nintendo Entertainment System, and by now you wouldn't even be scared of it at all.
No.
Like you would like be chuckling at it, like 8-bit Jason, here he comes. Like,
Well, even Pac-Man, he was being chased by
he's
ghosts.
being chased by ghosts.
That's right.
Those babies were real. One thing that's so fun to watch is, the whole point about something being scary is how it works. I remember there was like text-based video games. Like they were just
text.
You had to read. And,
read the story and then you make the next move.
Yeah.
It's like choose your own adventure book kind
Right,
of deal.
yeah.
Right?
Interactive, yeah.
Yeah.
And it was like there was this, I forget the name of I want to say it was like Zork or something like that. It was like
I
a
remember a
text.
game named Zork.
It was like a text RPG role-playing game. And it was like you could type in go left, go right, go straight, and then it was like you're in a room with a candle and a skull and so it was like reading it was almost more scary than like these graphics suck, So it was like the text alone was enough to get you kind of roped in. But then now, like you were getting at, there's a game series that I played quite a bit, and they do classify as scary. It's almost more like horror action than it is like ooh. It's a game series called Gears of War.
Yeah.
And I really recommend it for anybody out there and they are graphic. I mean, like right out of the gate, it is basically you are space marines fighting off these aggressive dinosaur-looking aliens called Locust. And it's a very simple story. They basically they exist to destroy humans, and you basically are a human colony that settled on a planet. Actually, in this mythos, you're just a human type. It's a separate universe. You're on a planet. You think it's a safe planet. Everybody's happy. And then all of a sudden, oh, snap. It's not a safe planet. There's a whole subterranean race of dinosaur aliens.
You gotta hate that. If the locust is as big as a T-Rex, I'm out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they basically drag people under the earth and kill them.
Nice.
And so the idea is that there's a constant war between these humans and these dinosaur aliens. And so it's a very, very straightforward premise, but they gear the game to be very like jump scary, and it's very well done. Where you're in a quiet house and it's like falling apart, and boards are creaky, and all of a sudden something jumps out from behind you, and you're fighting for your life.
And you throw the controller, and then you can't do anything.
Oh man, there was a game series called Dead Space, and that plays around with the with basically it's like 3 types of stories. It's like a horror story / science fiction / science fiction horror with like a psychological component. Like you might be going crazy. That's the entire thing. Like you might just be losing your sanity. None of this might even be happening on this space station.
So deep.
That was taken over by this like alien / ghost thing. It's all very interesting how they've grown.
When you were talking about jump scare games, one of the ones that my kids were very into when they were like in elementary school and maybe even in middle school a little bit was the Five Nights at Freddy's.
Oh,
that was just basically the premise is, and you straighten me out if I got this wrong or not. But
Andy, do you know about this?
You're walking around like
it's like a Chuck E. Cheese.
Chuck E. Cheese or a house or I think you're right.
It's like a theme park / restaurant that has this.
Was it abandoned or something?
Animatronics. It's like abandoned.
I think is it abandoned or you're
no,
there
it's not
at
abandoned.
night?
It's functional.
I think you're there at night. And
you're a security guard,
and then all of a sudden this bear-looking guy would just jump out on the screen like a full face right in your face. He'd just pop out at a moment's notice, and of course the kids would jump. And that was the fun in the game, to find their way around the park and try to. I don't know if they were trying to avoid him or trying to find him or what it was, but. It shows me how much I played the game. But
I've not played it. It's just it's not my jam. But it's
the kids loved it.
They love it. It was a phenomenon. It still is.
Yeah, I remember back I was in high school, so this would have been like mid to late '90s, and I can't remember if it was Resident Evil or Silent Hill, but it was one of those games, and I think it was for PlayStation. It wasn't PlayStation 2 yet. It was just regular PlayStation, and so for the time, I mean, the graphics were hyper realistic to me anyway, and it was almost too much for me. Yeah. It was because I remember, in one of the scenes on one of the levels, you're walking down a dark staircase into like a dark room full of zombies, and you're trying not to wake them up. And I mean, it's eerie. It's one thing to watch a movie, where you're just witnessing what's happened, but when you have a video game, you're witnessing and you're in control of what happens next.
Right. Or not in control.
Or not.
That's the thing. It is taking away that third person and having you be part of it versus observing it. Hands down of all the, and we've talked about this, like I don't gravitate towards like overly gory and stuff like that, but if it's if the components of the game are enough to pull me in, I'll play it to a point. There are some scary games I won't even touch. In fact, I'm going to be honest, I won't even mention them by name on this podcast. They're that dark.
Wow.
And they're just not worth, in my opinion, not even worth, I'm a big believer in art being open. And but on the same token, like I have kind of a line. So there's just things that I'll never do and I'll never look at. And there's some games out there I cannot recommend. One I can, and I do, and I kind of want to do one with us. I have an old Xbox 360 down there. It's a game that came out. It was called Left 4 Dead.
Okay.
And Left 4 Dead 2. Pat, have you heard of this series? It is
Left 4 Deader.
Picture the game or the TV show Walking Dead.
Okay.
But the zombies don't walk. They run.
Great.
And there are hundreds and hundreds of them all chasing you and 3 other buddies. And the game is so great because it's not there's no deep like gameplay to it. It's basically like the most arcadey thing you could ever get with this thing. It's basically 4 people. We get as many supplies as we can carry.
And you shoot the zombies.
And you got to get from point A to point B and don't die.
Gotcha.
And if you have the ability, as long as you have like bandages and stuff, to resurrect a teammate. But if you run out of bandages and someone gets downed, they can be killed. But as long as one person makes it to the checkpoint, the whole team succeeds.
Oh, cool.
Okay. So then when the next round starts, everybody's back and you can go.
Gotcha.
It is hands down. And they were smart. They didn't drag out the matches. Each match is probably 10 minutes long, 12 minutes long.
Yeah.
And it's all cooperative. There's not you against a buddy. It's like we have got to survive out there. And there's 500 things that want to kill us. And we got to and it is insane. These things will claw through the walls. Like the only safe place is to just move. You got to keep moving.
Keep moving.
And
Let's play that, man. That sounds like fun.
So fun. But it's also like Shireen comes downstairs. The first time I played this game, I'm just screaming because we shut the door and I'm like, thank God, guys, we're safe. And then I hear and you're seeing things from your perspective. It's a first person perspective game.
Right, yeah.
So I turn around and I'm like, all right, guys, we made it. And then the whole team starts screaming and I just see them run. And I turn around and the zombies had clawed through the walls. We hadn't figured out the mechanics of it yet. So I'm like, they can come through the walls. They're coming through the windows. I was like, oh no. Shireen comes down and she looks at me and she goes, what are you doing? All I hear is you screaming. But it's hands down some of the most fun I've had with that. But it is, you and 3 other players against 500 zombies that want to stop you from getting to point B. So
well, it's kind of interesting that, you think here and now with all the great graphics in video games, horror is kind of really taking its place in the video gaming industry. But you go back all the way back to the Atari 2600.
Wow.
They were trying to create scary games.
Oh gosh, give us one.
Well, there was one called Sea Monster. And basically, it's the same game as Space Invaders, but maybe flip it upside down.
Yep, you're shooting down into the ocean.
So you're shooting down into the ocean.
Take that, Nessie!
Trying
boom,
to get the
boom.
monsters, but the monsters could actually would shoot back up at you too. So it was kind of like flip Space Invaders upside down and pretend it's at the ocean. There you go.
Guys, picture that pitch in the video game room too. Okay, guys, it's Space Invaders, but flipped upside down. And the monster's got a gun too.
Give that guy a raise.
Now there's also
He's
one
a genius.
There's one called Shark Attack. This is kind of
It's sideways Space
pack-
Invaders.
It's like Space Invaders, but sideways,
Right.
and the fin comes up at you.
Give him another raise. Sorry.
This is a Pac-Man ripoff. And it has you collecting diamonds in a maze as a killer shark tries to constantly chase you. And not only will he gobble you up if given half the chance, but he also snags a diamond for himself each time he makes it across the screen. So he's like getting the money away from you as well.
Those dang sharks.
And he isn't the only thing you're worrying about. All that underwater racket has also woken up Nessie the Loch Ness Monster, who will chase you around the screen until you trick her into a cave at one of the 4 corners of the maze where power pellets can be used and you can dispense of her.
This reminds me of a game that I've played before. I just can't quite nail it down.
I mean, but just going down the list here, there's one for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yes,
Think of that for Atari 26. How bad the graphics must have been.
Run! The rectangle's holding a smaller rectangle. Run!
And of course, there's ones about snakes, kind of like a centipede ripoff, spiders. Just even back then, they were trying to come up with scary games for
They were
Would that have
trying
been
to
like
capture your imagination.
8-bit? 8-bit graphics?
right.
Or 4?
It was 8-bit. I think so. The early gaming was always 8-bit when it started.
And then
Right.
Nintendo was 16.
The first Nintendo was 8 still.
Oh, it's still 8.
But here's
okay.
the crazy part. They figured out how to just be better at it.
Oh, okay.
Like everything, it was like, okay, well, we just need to arrange these dots or these pixels in better arrangements and we can make them look more like a little character.
And I think the Intellivision was kind of like that.
I
There was
agree.
Atari 2600,
Yep.
and then Intellivision came out right after that. And that was kind of like a step above
Step up.
Atari in some ways. The graphics seemed a little crisper. I think the squares were just a little smaller.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so they looked, more real.
Yeah. And then that 16-bit came and it just blew all of our brains.
Yeah.
So, like 16-bit graphics. So speaking of 16-bit graphics, so we were kind of like, we betrayed Nintendo. It's so funny because the only Nintendo consoles I've owned is the first one, and we bought a Wii after a bit. And even then I'm like, like it didn't capture my imagination.
Right.
But so we had an NES. And then we were old school NES. We had the robot even. That stinking Robbie the robot that came with it that dropped. He played one game. And then we ended up getting, we got a Sega Genesis. That was the next one we got. And it was the first one. It had beaten Nintendo to the punch by a few months.
Right.
First one to have 16-bit graphics. And speaking of scary games, the game that it came with was called Altered Beast. And it was a game where, just like in real life, you punch a tombstone until it falls apart, and then the ghost comes out of the grave
Naturally.
and then it possesses you. Oh no, you kick a blue pig once again, like in real life,
Right.
And then the spirit from the possessed pig enters you and turns you into a werewolf.
That's what I call
kick those blue pigs.
Kick that pig! Kick it, Billy! Kick it!
that's what I call Thursday night.
Exactly. It's a Thursday night for Billy. But you turn into a werewolf who also gets like hulked out with big muscles, and you basically fight these demons, and it was basically a showcasing of 16-bit graphics.
And then you pull out a bunch of glow sticks.
Yes! Glow sticks! Altered Beast, glow stick part.
Well, you have to because the graveyard's dark.
Right.
Right. So it's just a necessity. Yeah.
Listen, how can I punch this tombstone if I can't see it with all my glow sticks?
That's right.
But yeah, you would punch tombstones, and I was like, this game is encouraging such bad behaviors. I can't condone this.
Well, this is such a broad topic.
Yeah.
This
We could go on
paranormal
forever.
in the
There could
video
be a whole
games.
episode at this point.
We'll revisit that at some point in time. But thanks for bearing with us as we mention every console ever made for every system.
Yeah, and hey, you know what? If you have a favorite scary video game, share it with us on our Facebook page.
That's right. All right. Well, moving on. What's up next, guys? Main mystery.
Main mystery.
Here we go.
And now it's time for the main mystery.
So typically, Thanksgiving is not associated with being scary.
Although there are mysterious happenings that take place in and around Thanksgiving. You know, the mashed potatoes go missing so quickly.
Exactly.
Who took the last of the pie?
I just put this bowl of cranberry sauce down. Why is it gone?
Exactly.
Why is the turkey making me so sleepy?
Exactly.
Yeah. Someone put a curse on Pat. He's asleep on the couch.
Pat's out. So hopefully you've enjoyed your Thanksgiving dinner, or lunch, however your family rolls. You've watched the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. You're getting those Christmassy thoughts start to pop in your brain. Well, I got a scary story to share with you. I'm going to scare you to death. This has to do with one of the earliest settlements of European settlers. I said settlers more than I should. On American soil. And it has a scary story associated with it. And a lot of people may know where I'm going with this, but a lot of people may not have. I had heard of this story when I was a kid. I lived on the East Coast most of my life, well, now half my life, living on the East Coast. And I had heard this mentioned, but as a kid, I'd never thought about it. I lived in Virginia for a short amount of time. There's an actual town named this in Virginia. And I'm talking about the colony of Roanoke, North Carolina. So, quick synopsis here. In 1587, so we associate the colonization.
Like witch trial time period almost.
Yeah,
I think that was
mean,
early 1600s.
I mean, America's not America yet.
Right.
I mean, this is even pre-witch trials, I think. I mean, this is like European witch trials. We're not
Right.
even in Boston doesn't exist yet.
Okay.
In this time frame, we're talking 1587, not even 1600 yet. 115 settlers from England arrived at Roanoke Island off the coast of North Carolina. The governor of Roanoke, and these people were from England, by the way, left. They got there and they had established the colony. And after a short bit, John White's like, "Hey, y'all, I got to go back." And this is back then. Even now, sailing anywhere it's not a short trip.
Right.
But he had to go back to England to replenish supplies and just kind of get everything he needed to kind of, second wind, get the colony up on its feet. It just so happens, as he's in England, war breaks out in Europe, and so it delays his return by 3 years. Oops. That's some hardcore Eddie time.
and
right
life
there.
expectancy wasn't that high back then. That's like a quarter of your life.
Exactly.
Right?
I'm
Right,
down
exactly.
17% of my life, man.
Oh, man.
So when he gets back to the Roanoke settlement, all traces of the settlement are gone. Completely gone.
So they're waiting for their tea for 3 years.
Yeah. Hello, this teacup's not filling itself, Mr. White. So he comes back, and the settlement of Roanoke is gone. Now, this is where the creepy, not that that's not creepy enough, but here's where it gets really interesting. There was one skeleton laying around. The buildings, the fortifications were all dismantled, taken apart. No signs of struggle, no signs of war, fighting, nothing. Just no people. And then on a wood post in the settlement, there was the word Croatoan carved into this post. And I'll spell that for everybody. It's Croatoan. Croatoan.
Weird.
The tribe of Native Americans that lived near this encampment were Croatoan Indians, is what they were known as.
Okay.
So that word was carved into a pole, and there was a skeleton found. There's a little bit of backstory on some of this. They apparently had not great relationships with the surrounding Native Americans. And initially, when the first settlers got to Roanoke, there was enough, the conditions were bad enough, and they had felt like the rapport between them and the natives were bad enough. They weren't comfortable staying. So the first trip back, a bunch of people actually initially left before John White had even left to resupply. The first round of settlers left back to England with Sir Francis Drake. Fun little tidbit there. Yeah. He was part of that initial wave of people that came. So the people that stayed built the colony, and then John White leaves, comes back, everybody's gone. Fun facts to kind of just drive this home for everybody. No bodies were discovered. No bodies at all. No evidence of any struggles, no conflict. No signs of struggle. All the houses and fortifications were dismantled. They weren't destroyed. They were just taken down. And then John White had instructed the people at the colony, if there was any signs of trouble, carve a Maltese cross into a tree so that I know that you encountered trouble. And I drew a little symbol. It looks like basically 4 arrows all pointing, like the pointy end is all pointing together. That symbol was never found. Nobody carved that in anything to indicate that there had been trouble. And so there's literally everybody at this point is just guessing on what happened to these people.
And that's it. Like,
they're gone.
They're gone. That's the mystery.
And there's no record of where they went or who was there or anything.
There is no witnesses. There's no documents. There's no nothing. There's basically just people trying to piece together what they felt like happened. The best that they can conjecture is that the people encountered a bad enough time that they just left. And that they ended up basically making a pact or a truce with the natives and just kind of just followed them and just became part of that native tribe and then just left. But the
interesting is they never did the signal to
no signal.
Yeah.
Nothing.
There was trouble.
Yeah.
Why would they have disassembled their living quarters?
Yeah,
that's a waste of manpower.
Yeah. There's so many mysteries.
I'm guessing they were hungry. They were probably low on energy, low on food, low on everything.
Yeah,
why waste your time taking your house apart?
An argument would be that they were maybe scavenging for stuff,
keeping the nails or something. Or
but who's to say? Because once again, there was no destruction. Like, they didn't bust chairs apart to use for firewood. They just left everything. One of the big things, too, was the easy explanation is, they just joined up with the tribe, but that's assuming the tribe would even have them.
Yeah.
And then the second thing was there was no real evidence of the tribe absorbing 100 people into their numbers, and all of a sudden they just added a whole ton of people. I mean, you'd have to sustain that many people if you have a fairly small tribe. You're not going to be able to double or triple your size and have that not impact everybody. So there's a lot of explanation for it. This is what probably happened, but there is no record of what happened with these people. 115 people essentially vanished into thin air. And there's no...
They probably built a boat and just went to the Caribbean or
That's
something.
what it is.
It's I'm going to Florida.
Yeah.
They must have built about 8 Gen A's. That's my boat.
It's Gen A 1, 2,
Gen A.
3.
Gen A 3.
Maybe they were taken by the mothership.
Yeah. So this is where the paranormal seeps into this. So there's a lot of talk of some paranormal activity happening around the area, mostly ghosts, spirit activity, noises in the night, things that seeing things in the woods that they weren't able to nail down.
She's a witch.
Exactly. And once again, there was the environment that they were in was kind of ready to explode. I mean, they're like I said, their relationship with the natives wasn't great, and so there's a lot of just mystery here that is just kind of like we literally can't explain for a disappearance. And there's no grave sites, there's no
That's weird.
bodies, there's that one skeleton that was just left out.
Well, and if they wrote Croatoan, they had somebody in the village could write and read.
Right.
But there was no journal, no diary, no written records.
No.
No SOS.
Literally carved the name of the native tribe closest to the settlement into a post and then just left it there. So there's scholars and there's historians and there's people who have studied, all these things who come up with all these different explanations, but nothing solid that could explain it.
So, do you know if this has become a part of the Roanoke culture? Like today, do they celebrate this story in any way? Or?
I believe there's some like festivals and like retellings of the stories, and like Sharina pointed out, there's this is where the paranormal community and some storytellers have kind of taken these stories and ran with them. Where there's an entire season of American Horror Story that's centered around the settlement of Roanoke.
Oh, really?
And it does take into account some of those myths and legends that surrounded it. Everything from like forest witches to monsters and this is where it gets a little bit and this is where my mind started to go. And there are some people who think that this might be a case of even early UFO mass abductions, where if there was a strong enough presence of UFO activity and all of a sudden you have these new people show up and it's like, hey, there's a new whole segment of humans, we're gonna just snatch them.
Well, and there's been some similar cases, maybe not quite on that scale, but I've watched some documentaries on some of these unexplained files type of shows where there's been a couple worldwide cases of boats, small sailing vessels with a crew of 3 or 4, and they find the vessel just aimlessly, no passengers on board, just cruising around the Pacific, and plenty of food, beers are on ice, the plates of food are hot, enough supplies, nobody on board was mentally ill. Absolutely no explanation. They're just gone. Like what? All 4 people just jumped overboard for no reason.
Right.
Like there's no explanation.
Right.
And that's happened more than once. So
to have an entire group of people gone with no explanation and their personal belongings and all that's just left behind, and they just up and left. The carving of the word Croatoan in a wood post is interesting, and someone had even pointed out like it's almost a little like kind of silly, like almost like there was something nefarious that went on, and that the solution was we'll just carve the word Croatoan in there,
let them take the blame.
It'll be ambiguous enough that they'll assume that something happened involving those Indians and Native Americans, and I'm thinking in the context of how they would say it, and then they would just assume the responsibility or blame them for it, and then take the attention away from whatever the heck it may have really been. It's interesting.
I don't know why that word kind of gives me the willies a little bit. Croatoan. I've heard of the Crow Native Americans. I've never heard of Croatoan. Yeah, but. At any rate,
it's interesting, and it's one of those things that, like, with such little evidence to really like start building a case, it's where all of these different theories can just really poke out. Like, I mean, it looks to me like an abduction. I mean, the only thing that would explain like something to that level is that you were just taken without notice, without anything, and gone, or kind of, I hate to say it this way, but kind of like charmed, almost like put under some sort of odd trance and then like removed from your environment.
Well, here's the other thing. Let's go out on a limb and say that they were taken in by the Croatoan and they just kind of assimilated into that culture. You think somewhere along the lines there would have been reports of, hey, there's this group of Native Americans who have like 150 Caucasian people in their bunch, and then they probably would have intermingled and there'd be offspring and
right.
But there is no reports of a white Native American group out there.
Plus, you just don't disappear like that. No. Even if you did, like, just all of a sudden just be like, decide, what, I'm gonna live with these people and become part of their culture. That doesn't just happen overnight, and you don't just acclimate like a light switch. Right. And like you said, eventually, even with those numbers, somebody would be like, I'm going back to this thing. This is where it gets a little dark. So there was a movie that had come out a while back, and this reminded me of the Roanoke story. It's so dark. We read the synopsis of this movie, and we decided to not watch it.
Was it a recent flick?
Yeah, it came out last year. I want to say either last year or the year before that. It was called The Witch.
Oh.
Have you guys heard of this movie?
No.
It's called The Witch. And it's even made more eerie by the fact that the W in witch is just 2 V's. And I don't know why, but just seeing it spelled that way looks off-putting to me. But it's set just like in Roanoke, super early Americas.
Sure.
Not even America. It's a settlement. There's nothing but wilderness and mystery surrounding this encampment. And this family has done something wrong. They don't get into what was done, but the family did something that involved the settlement saying, you got to go. And so the family, the father is a father and mother, I believe a daughter, an older daughter, and 2 siblings, a younger sibling and then a baby. And the family is ejected from the colony. You got to leave. So they do. And the dad and the family, the whole family, build a little log cabin right outside of these woods, far enough away from the encampment that they're gone, but close enough that they can go into town and get supplies. Like that much they're allowed to do, but they can't live there.
Okay.
Long story short, the younger kid starts reporting having full conversations with the family goat, like full-on conversations with the family goat that they've nicknamed Black Phillip, which apparently has some ties to some demonic stuff.
Okay.
And then the older girl, begins to feel like there is a presence in the woods beckoning to her. And am I scared? Am I giving away too much?
I'm scared. I'm scared already.
The family, more and more trauma begins to happen to this family, and the younger sibling begins to act kind of odd and violent, telling him Black Phillip is telling him to do these things. And I don't want to give away the movie. There's some darkness that happens, and the entire family basically goes missing, and the older daughter is summoned into the woods and is never seen again. And so the whole family is disappeared by this ominous dark presence that's in the forest. And the point being, they're pulling enough from the story that do borrow from folk tales and legends of what early American, I put in air quotes, America wasn't around in the 1500s. Early settlers of North America were kind of reporting, and not reporting, but telling these stories. Oh, don't go in the forest. There's evil spirits there and stuff like that. So do with that what you will. But the fact that Roanoke has all the makings of a similar story is just really interesting.
And there's no closure because we'll never know.
Yeah, we'll never know.
No, it's literally one of those mysteries that everybody who would ever be able to share any information is gone.
Right.
And any traces are gone. I mean, it's like one of those things that'll probably just never go answered.
Yeah.
Wow. There's that for you.
And I like it because something like that wouldn't or couldn't happen in today's world.
No.
Of information and technology. Everything's public, everything's shared. If an entire group of people go missing, you're going to get to the bottom of it using GPS satellites or some other means. And
Well, you would think so.
well, yeah,
Except for like those
You
airplanes.
think about
Well,
those airplanes
true.
disappearing in the ocean.
Yeah.
So it's-
I mean, we just shrug our shoulders and say, well, it must have crashed and we just can't find it.
but
it's-
again, I think kind of same thing.
Although I
Is
think
it
they
a-
did for that
one of them,
they did
Yeah.
find some pieces of the plane.
Yeah.
So you would assume.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking with some of those missing airplane type deals, I wonder if they hit a weird patch of fog or something like we have reported down about Bermuda Triangle, and maybe they just disappeared into a different dimension.
Just got sucked up into a wormhole.
Yep. Poke their head through the hole, see what was on the other side.
Which, and there's stories of like naturally occurring portals that show up. I mean, there's that one story about that one poet in like northern Mexico where he went walking and never came back and nobody found him ever. Like not even like where he was. Like they knew where he went and they went and walked like whatever a normal human could. He went out there in dress shoes. Like he was walking out in like church Sunday shoes.
Never.
He went down to Cabo, just had a
Exactly.
such a good time. He didn't ever come back.
I'm never coming back from Cabo. You'll never bring me back. But
There's just so many cases of people that disappeared and were never seen again. There's a story, I think it was a Nebraska farmer actually.
oh wow,
Disappeared.
What?
Nobody could find him. I'm almost positive it was in Nebraska, but the weirdest thing is nobody could see him. He disappeared, but his family could hear him crying. Like close,
That's eerie.
like close, like he was feet away from them crying in like an open field, like no barns, nothing to hide behind. He wasn't in a hole in the ground. He wasn't behind a tree. There was nothing out there. And it was almost like he had disappeared into a different dimension or
Kinda like
something.
something out of Stranger Things, you know?
yeah. Oh
yeah.
gosh, yes.
He was in
Yes.
the underworld or whatever you call it.
Upside down.
Upside down.
That's so
But
weird.
That would
anyway,
be
but
so off-putting.
how many people, does it say how many people were in that Roanoke colony?
115.
Jeez.
Went missing.
See, that's
All of them.
all of them.
It wasn't like 90 of them went.
They didn't leave Chuck behind to
Yeah.
tell people what happened. Hey, Chuck, you stay here.
You're gonna leave Chuck behind.
I'll catch up with you later, Chuck.
Guys, this is our chance. We can ditch Chuck. But like, yeah, all of them gone. There wasn't like a disagreement amongst one of them or 10 of them. Like, man, I'm not doing that. I'm staying behind.
Yeah.
They'll be back. You know, even just the sheer odds. You're gonna have a handful of people that are like, listen, you're proposing. Let me get this straight. We're gonna go live with natives, and we're gonna leave behind the stuff we have here. And granted, it had been 3 years. I get it. They're probably assuming he's dead, but I mean, still, what you know. I'm just going with what people do. Reinvent my entire culture or stick with what I know. You know, I just don't know. No sign of any.
Well, you think about it. I mean, 3 years is a very long time to be isolated. And,
Yeah.
And if you get a better offer, you might want to act on it. If you're hungry enough, you know, they might have wanted to.
You're completely
assimilate
right.
with somebody else.
I mean, you're thinking it takes him probably a year to come back. Okay,
Yeah.
it takes him a year to come back.
He's
1
not
year
back.
goes. Okay, he's a little late. Another 1 year, 2 years go by. You're like, oh boy.
we
And then
gotta
on the
do
third
something.
year, you got to make some choices.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's a lot to it, but I mean, there's just so many other reasons. I mean, you know, like, how do you all of a sudden you just see some like people from England who are now living with Native Americans. Yeah, we didn't know what was happening. Or maybe it was so remote still back then. We're talking about 1598. Maybe there wasn't any other people for them to see. But yeah, they came back to an empty colony. Just nothing there. A skeleton and a post with the word Croatoan carved into it.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Yeah, so
sleep tight.
Hug your loved ones a little closer. Don't talk to Black Phillip. He's a jerk.
And if you're gonna up and leave a letter and tell us why.
More than one word, bro. More than one word. Don't just write store.
Store.
Which store, Eddie?
Store?
There's
Why?
so many Walmarts.
I went to a store.
Store.
In Vancouver.
Well, thanks for listening, everybody. And, you know, we'll get another episode locked and loaded for you soon. As always, special thanks to freesound.org for providing some of the eerie music and sound effects for this episode. And send us email, paranormaldads@gmail.com. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at Paranormal Dads. And what else you got, boys?
Check out our website, www.paranormaldads.com. We'll have any of our show notes available there. Eddie?
A happy paranormal Thanksgiving from all of us and our families at Paranormal Dads. The ghost of your Thanksgiving turkey will be happy to walk around the house but also I do want to put out we do have Paranormal Dads campfire t-shirts that we have for sale. Feel free to reach out to us on Facebook Messenger. Just message us for pricing and sizing and all that, and we can get them shipped off to you, and you can wear them and all of your paranormally goodness.
Speaking of disappearing, they're so popular. They're going fast. Get them while you can, people. They're going to be gone.
Get them before the shirts are all ghosts. Like before we Roanoke these shirts.
We're going to Roanoke them. But we hope you have a good Thanksgiving. If you need to order an extra large on account of all the turkey and mashed potatoes, we're not judging.
All sizes.
Bump it up a size.
Do it all the sizes.
All right.
Well, thank
Thank
you
you,
all.
everybody. As God is my witness, I thought turkeys could fly. So
I was gonna say one of the gems was Eddie taking off his pen cap and digging in his ear like a Q-tip.
Did you hear that? Did you see that? I was like,
I thought it was gonna come out your other ear.
my ear was itchy.
I can't remember what buttons do what, and I'm that idiot. I'm like, I accidentally punched my horse. I froze. I didn't know what to say.
What do we do?
Just cut it off there.